Yo, YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy SalvationsElite. We are back with another video, guys. And today, guys, oh my goodness, we are talking about CDL Los Angeles, the first event in Los Angeles in the CoD League. And I could not be more excited. Obviously, this is the double homestand for both LA OpTic and the LA Guerrillas. And so there's a lot to talk about. A whole lot of new rosters that we're going to be seeing first time in action this weekend. And there's a ton of storylines weaving in and out of the weekend as a whole. So, of course, first of all, tomorrow, the Best of 3 podcast is finally releasing. We're a little bit behind on it this week because I got back from Paris late Monday night, so it threw off the whole schedule. Anyway, we got some pretty fun topics, and we're covering a lot of news in the episode, so I think it should be a good one, so be on the lookout for it. But with that said, let's get right into the video. So in Group A, we got the LA Guerrillas, the Minnesota Rokkr, OpTic Gaming, and Seattle Surge. So not like the craziest group off the rip, but in Group B, though, we got the Atlanta FaZe, we've got Dallas Empire, we've got the Florida Mutineers, and we have New York Subliners. A little bit stronger Group B, to say the least. I mean, at first glance, it's unfortunate circumstances for the New York Subliners. They're going to be in a tough spot trying to get out of this group with their new roster now that they've benched Zero. So, I mean, overall, obviously, there's tons of storylines throughout, but, like, that was the first thing that stuck out to me when you look at the teams and the groups in this tournament. So, since we're already talking Group B, let's just stick inside of Group B. So, to kick off the tournament, FaZe rematches versus the Mutineers, and the Subliners face off versus the Empire. So, overall in the group, I wouldn't expect anything too crazy, considering the Subliners' new roster, and of course, like, FaZe's dominance. At this point, you have to expect FaZe to get out of the group pretty easily from the winner's side, winning both their matches. I mean, a second round matchup between FaZe and Dallas Empire would be pretty interesting, but I don't expect Empire to have taken a big enough step forward at this point to really contest or really compete against Atlanta. So a more interesting match would be if the Empire lose to FaZe and then get knocked down to play the Mutineers, and the winner of that game would escape the group. Question really is, like, is the Empire back? Are the Empire still the third best team in the league? Or where are they at right now in the standings? You know, Rambo's now their coach, and I think Shotzi and Illy and even Hook have a lot to prove in this tournament. Of course, their team as a whole really does, but a lot of the pressure really rises on the young guns on that team. It makes for a pretty interesting match when you're facing off against a team that was just in the finals of CDL Atlanta and the Mutineers. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 5-game series. I mean, it just all depends on how the Mutineers come out and play. Obviously, they still feel like they're pretty inconsistent with how they're going to play. I mean, Skies was an absolute monster in Atlanta, but Pristini and Havoc were average at best. They had a few aces up their sleeve to pull out some wins in Atlanta, but I don't know if I see it happening this time around. So I have the Empire and then, of course, FaZe coming out of Group B. So when it comes to Group A, there's probably a lot of different outcomes that I could really see happening. We've got the LA versus LA face-off, and then we've got the Rokkr versus the Surge. So some pretty different matchups in the first round for the most part. When it comes to the Rokkr match, I would fully expect the Rokkr to beat this new and improved Seattle Surge roster with Pander over Enable. It just does not feel like that Seattle Surge roster is going to be ready to play against the Rokkr, who've been a pretty well-oiled machine so far and looked fantastic in Atlanta as well. So I fully expect the Rokkr just to handle their business against Seattle. When it comes to this LA versus LA matchup, obviously we got the new Guerrillas roster with 3 new starters, which we talked about in yesterday's video. And of course we have OpTic, who decided to make no changes. And there's a lot of pressure riding on them in this tournament to at least make it out of the group and play pretty well overall as a whole. But I would be really surprised if the Guerrillas were able to pull something out here. I mean, they've only been playing like as a team for like a week or so at most. You can't imagine they're going to be well practiced or feeling like a unit heading into this tournament at all. So I got OpTic winning that matchup as well. So then that would set up an OpTic versus Rokkr matchup, which would be pretty interesting at least. But I would, again, expect the Rokkr to take care of business against OpTic and move out of the group fairly handily. In the podcast, we're going to talk about some more OpTic roster change scenarios, which would likely happen in the upcoming week or so after the event, if it doesn't go well for OpTic, of course. In this matchup, I got the Rokkr, which would knock OpTic down to losers and play the winner of the Seattle Surge LA Guerrillas matchup. I'm going to take the Surge again. I just expect that team to be a little bit better off than the Guerrillas at this point with how much practice they both had, and the natural talent, of course, that's still on the Seattle Surge. Of course, they got Octane, and what else do you really need? So now we set up an OpTic versus Surge match, and I've got OpTic coming out of the group. I think they're going to clutch up and at least beat the teams they need to beat to get out of the group, but that puts them into a pretty tough first round matchup with a single elimination bracket against FaZe. So, I mean, there's not much to say here. I fully expect FaZe to 3-0 OpTic in that first round. And then, of course, we've got the other semifinal matchup, the Rokkr versus the Empire, which in my opinion would be the most interesting match of the whole weekend. I'm just really excited to see who's a better team. I honestly have no clue. The Rokkr and the Empire could go either way at this point, but I definitely think there are some X factors. So first of all, for like the Rokkr, GodRx is 100% an X factor in this series. I think right now there's nobody on Empire Empire who can really compete with his ability to slay, his slaying power as a whole. I mean, he casually dropped a 1.26 KD at Atlanta with a plus 75 plus minus, so he was on fire, and I 100% expect him to still be in pretty good shape for this tournament as well. I mean, the question is, like, can Hook slay like Hook has slayed in the past in this game? We don't know at this point. I mean, we really haven't seen it yet, and so there's still a lot of questions to be answered with Empire, and I'm not quite sure I'm ready to buy all in to the Dallas Empire just yet. At this point, let's just look at all of Empire's series to try to get a feel for where they are as a team. They're 0-3 versus the Huntsmen, 2-9 in map count, and they haven't beat them in a hard point yet. They're 0-1 versus FaZe, and they got 3-0 in that series. They're 2-0 versus Seattle, which they're 6-1 in map count against Seattle. But I mean, Seattle's basically been a bottom 4 team basically all this year so far. And then they're 1-0 versus London, which that went to a game 5, so they won 3-2. That's why, like, in the last podcast, I talked about the Empire being a middle tier team right now. And this match against the Rokkr would really put them back into that top tier of teams. But I just don't see it happening. I think the Rokkr have the X factor and God RX. I mean, at this point, from what we've seen in Modern Warfare, they basically match up across the board, player to player, with the Empire. As a whole, we've seen the Rokkr be a much more well-oiled machine than the Empire as a team. In hard points, more slaying power, and so that's why I got the Rokkr going through to the finals to face off against FaZe. Again, man, I would love to say the Rokkr have a chance in this series, but I just think FaZe at the end of the day, like, they're gonna clutch up. So I got FaZe in a 3-1 in the grand finals to take home CDL Los Angeles. And I mean, at this point, the MVP, Cellium, was the MVP of the last tournament. I'll take Simp as the MVP of this tournament. I'd be surprised if we go 2 Atlanta wins without Simp being the MVP of at least one of them. And another FaZe win would set up for a pretty epic Chicago homestand later in April. So I think it'll be a pretty awesome tournament, and I'm really, really excited for it. Let me know what you guys think below. Any thoughts that you guys have, I would love to hear them. And of course, guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe if you guys enjoyed it. And as always, I'm your boy SalvationsElite, and we'll see you next time.